Welcome to the podcast. Today, my guest is Andrew Plunkett.
G'day, mate. How are you?
I'm good. I'm a bit recovering, actually, from a weekend in Melbourne.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you did that. I'm responsible for that.
Yeah, at the airport at 4:30 in the morning after getting back to the motel at 1 o'clock in the morning, that was a bit harsh.
Yeah, that doesn't usually happen. It's just that Australian Eagles have picked up
Boat cruise.
the boat cruise contract. So it was one of those things. Michael got sick last year, ended up in hospital, and we replaced we changed the Warrnambool show to February, and then we picked up Geelong on Saturday, and we had to get the act out of Melbourne on the Sunday to get to Port Vila. So
Very tight timing.
we won't do
The
that
boys
to-
were very worried about whether they'd make the plane on time.
I didn't think there'd be a problem with it because, you know, we made Qantas responsible because it was a through travel thing. So it was basically up to them to get them on the plane. So I wasn't worried, but everyone's built differently. Everyone stresses differently.
Yep, that's true.
I stress quietly, and Shane stresses loudly.
So we're referring to a band called the Australian Eagles Show, which is basically an Eagles tribute show, a very, very good one, which I've just done my second weekend of gigs with.
4 shows.
So it's all very new and fresh for me.
Yeah, the band's fairly well oiled now, you know.
Yeah,
so
it is.
It's, we're trying to ease you in.
What is your first memories of music and being involved with music?
First memories of music, probably would have been Adelaide, probably 73, 74. Suzi Quatro was the first act that I went, wow. And then I started listening to my brother's albums, and he had everything from Deep Purple to the Eagles to Fleetwood Mac to Elton John.
Very 70s playlist.
A very 70s playlist. And then I think it was 74. I loved Skyhooks.
Oh, wow.
And that's what really got me into listening to radio. And then I went to see Queen at Apollo Stadium.
Wow.
And that just absolutely blew me away. It was like the best band I'd ever seen in my life. And then after that, I went to Apollo Stadium again and I saw Blondie. And that was Blondie's first album, then their first tour out of America. And that got me hooked, right, on music in general. Then I finished school, did an apprenticeship, hated that. I went to a theatre school to study artistic direction. That was around about 79. I got through 2 years of that, and I got expelled. We did a play in Wagga, and we did the rehearsal, we did the play, and then after the play, there was a critique of play with, and everyone was there. NIDA was there, all the theatre schools from all around the country were there. I was with South Australian Academy of Performing Arts, and the guy that was playing the lead and myself had gone to, it was like Wagga Leagues Club on the Saturday afternoon. We met 2 girls, and as soon as I finished that play, I was out of there. And of course we weren't there, and I got back on the Monday and I'd got expelled for not going to the critique. But I was going to clubs and, you know, doing what a 20-year-old does. And I used to go to the Findon Hotel, and there was a guy, his name was Peter Jackson, and I was 20, he was about 35, maybe 40. And I used to see him at the end of the night, and he'd see the hotel manager and he'd pick up a bundle of cash, and then he'd keep some and give the band some. And I went, and I'd seen it about 3 or 4 times, so I walked up to him and I said, "What do you do?" He goes, "Oh, I'm the band's agent." He said, "Venue pays me, I pay the band, and I keep 10%. Now, I was earning about, I don't know, $80 a week back then. Bands were earning $350 a night. And they were like show bands back then in all the clubs. And so he kept $35. And I went, that's nearly half my wage. I can do that. And that's how I basically got into music. And there was a whole lot of young bands around in Adelaide at the time. And you get to know everyone. It's just...
Adelaide, it surprises me how many great bands came out of Adelaide.
Yeah, well, I came into it around about 1980. So Chisel, Angels,
Stars,
they were already doing their thing. They'd already left Adelaide. There was just a whole lot of other young bands coming through. And because you're young and you network together, I ended up picking up 2 or 3 bands, you know. One was a band called La Rocks. I picked up a band called the Dukes, which Vince from the Zep Boys was the lead singer. And there was a guy called Brenton Roberts he was the first guy that I'd met, and I actually managed that band. And bands were working for about $350 a show. And I discovered that these bands had a big network outside of the normal crowd that would go. They knew people.
Yep.
So I decided not to do guarantees anymore, and I just went, I'm doing door deals. And, you know, the Dukes with Vince in it, they were pulling like 500-600 people on a $10 ticket. Brenton Roberts was pulling like 700 on a $10 ticket. And that was a lot of money back then. So we did that, but of course...
So the bands must have been quite happy about doing that then?
Yeah, they were.
Quite an elevation out of...
It was out of the norm, but everything sort of changed in 1980. You know, like the show band era was over. Before Graham Hutchison up here...
Pub rock was really starting to take over?
Pub rock was starting to take off. The other thing is that Mushroom, Harbour and Premier, who are all linked, the big agencies and the record company, took their bands out of theatres and put them into pubs. So Skyhooks, when they released the Women in Uniform album, had started to go into pubs. So there was a hotel called the Arkaba Hotel that held about, 1,000 people. And that was the start of bands coming out of theatres and back into, well, not even back into pubs, but into pubs. It was completely new. The acts were cheaper to see because you didn't have all the theatre costs and all the rest of it. So I think like for 5 weekends in a row, I saw Split Ends, I saw Jojo Zep, I saw Australian Crawl, you know, I saw In Excess. So all of these new bands that were coming through, and some of the established ones were starting to come through pubs. And then that multiplied all the way through Australia. There was pubs in Melbourne, Sydney, like Selena's, and then Queensland. And that was the start of the beer barn era. But music changed. You know, like whereas people were listening to Elton, Paul McCartney and Wings, Bad Company, all of that sort of stuff, it changed. And stuff like Lena Lovitch came through. Virgin were very, very... Virgin Records were instrumental in that whole early new wave thing, because they were picking up bands. They saw the way music was going before the majors did.
Okay.
And they were picking up bands that everybody else knocked back. I mean, famously, they picked up the Sex Pistols after EMI tore up their contract.
Yeah.
But he signed Mike Oldfield that did Tubular Bells. You know, he did that. But he was also signing all of the young new wave stuff that was coming through. And then that sort of sparked a completely different look and a completely different sound for music in general. We still had our staple of Australian bands that everyone went to see, but there was a whole range. And by 82, 83, you saw the effects of it with early Duran Duran, Culture Club, Orchestral Manoeuvres in the Dark, yeah, all of those bands. Human League, all coming out of England, you know. And
I guess the Police to some degree was part of that.
yeah, the Police. Oh, yeah. You can go back as far as 77. The really weird thing is there was a punk girl, all right, and punk was an image like goth, you know. But there was one particular girl, would have been like 1977, and I was in love with this girl. And I used to go to this punk club every Thursday just to try and go and meet her. And they were playing like Roxanne and all of that sort of stuff in this punk club. It was part of the DJ repertoire. So, and of course, you know, they become mainstream and all the rest of it. But they were new. The other thing that was happening too, there were young cover bands like Gloria from U2, because music wasn't instant like it is now. You know, like music's released here and we're hearing it automatically.
Record companies didn't automatically release it everywhere all at once. They would release it in certain like in countries and then wait and then release it somewhere else. Or ABBA had a massive hit here. They were successful here before they made it anywhere else.
Well, the funny thing was a lot of bands were doing, back then, and young bands, right? So, and we're all in our 60s now, but they were young then, right? So what they were doing was, because of that, there were bands performing 2 or 3 U2 songs that were massive hits overseas, but we hadn't heard them yet.
Oh, wow.
So they were doing Gloria and, you know, all that early U2 stuff, and the punter thought they were originals. There was another act doing 3 or 4 Devo songs. They were doing Whip It and all of that stuff. Australia hadn't even heard it yet. And then you go to bands like the B-52s, who were nothing in America, working clubs in Hawaii, yet had a number 1 album in Australia. And that was, I mean, Countdown, I've got a lot to do with it, but Countdown was sort of, I think it was accidental in it, because the youth were driving what they wanted to listen to. Now remember, 90% of that stuff, the commercial radio stations weren't even playing, and the only time you could hear top 40 stuff was between 6 p.m. and 9 p.m.
Oh, wow.
Right? They didn't play it. It was all...
Like the Casey Kasem's top 40,
that's
sort of thing.
That's what you got, you know, because during the day you had Dr. Hook and all the other shit.
I remember going to school, and in the morning the radio was on and listening to, is it Benny Hill? Ernie, and he drove the fastest milk cart in the West.
Yeah. It was just shit, you know, tie a yellow ribbon around the old oak tree,
yeah.
all of that sort of crap. So...
They were music for an older audience.
We were still in that era of conservatism, right? And that's basically what advertisers wanted. I mean, because radio was a massive medium, you know. Radio wasn't cheap to advertise on. And they had the radio stations had their formats, not networked like they are now. I mean, 5KA in Adelaide would have been different to whatever the radio station was in Sydney or Brisbane. They could have a completely different playlist, but they still had their staples like Kenny Rogers and Dr. Hook and, you know, all of that other stuff. So it was easy listening, and between 6 and 9, you heard Skyhooks, Hush, you know, and all of the new stuff. But you weren't hearing B-52s, and you weren't hearing U2, and you weren't hearing, you know, that took a while for all of that. It had to be a hit. And then Countdown helped it along by discovering acts as well. And they made acts, you know, they made ABBA, you know, Countdown made ABBA. And they did that, but there was stuff that they wouldn't touch either, you know, early on. But there was an underground movement, you know, for all of that sort of stuff. No different to now.
No.
You know, it's exactly the same.
Yeah.
You know?
Except, you know, obviously it's different mediums.
Different mediums now. I mean, I wished I was 20 now. If I was 20 now and I was in the music business, I'd be the happiest man on earth.
Yeah.
There's just so much opportunity.
Yeah.
People think it's harder, but it's not. It's actually easier. You haven't got one person. You haven't got, like...
Not the gatekeepers that there used to be?
Not the gatekeepers. I mean, I can remember, Brenton Roberts in Adelaide in 1980 wrote a whole bunch of songs. You know, he was the biggest local act in Adelaide. We sent his music to ATV Northern in Sydney, which is a publishing company. They had the Beatles, they had Paul McCartney, they had everyone. And I'm 20 years old. I didn't even know what a record company looked like. I didn't even know what a publishing company was. And you couldn't look up the internet to go, oh yeah, that's what they do. So we've walked in, we've had a meeting. This is October 1980, my first time in Sydney. And we've walked into ATV Northern and had a meeting, and the guy's name was Don Bruner, American guy. And he's going, this is what we do, and this is who we've got, and this is who we've signed, and, you know, there's different publishing deals. There's, you know, like Beatles are on an 85-15, and he's on a 70-30, and, you know, we'd offer you a 60-40, and, you know, so it was all of that sort of stuff. And I'm sitting there going, I don't know what the fuck this guy's talking about, but anyway, we'll play along. So they listen to the songs, and they go, we don't think the songs are strong enough, but we love his image, we want to pursue it, we're going to give you a bunch of songs. So I went, okay, cool. So they gave us a bunch of songs on a cassette tape, all demos from all of these people that they had signed.
They're
on
songwriters.
They're songwriters, right? And there was a song on there, right? And Brenton's going, I'm not fucking singing anyone else's songs, I want to sing my own. And I'm going, even at 20, I'm going, your songs aren't strong enough, they've told us that, let's release a single with one of these songs. And as I'm walking out, Don Bruner said to me, he goes, there's a song on there that's perfect for Brenton, and it's called Physical. He said, we've offered it to Olivia Newton-John, and you've got until Monday.
Oh,
right?
wow.
This is a true story. Brenton didn't like the song. Now, Physical was written by a guy, right?
Yeah.
And it was from a guy's perspective, right? And I listened to the song and went, this is a hit. You know, it's got everything. And even being a dumb 20-year-old, I knew it was a hit. We'd got back to Adelaide, and Brenton said, no, I'm not doing anyone else's material. So I went, okay. That was sort of the start of the end of the relationship with Brenton and I. And like, this guy was huge. I mean, he was consistently pulling like 700 or 800 people a night in Adelaide when he worked. And you could work 4 nights a week, 5 nights a week. Mm. But it was becoming difficult. And he said no. Anyway, I got a call on the Monday, and he said, don't worry about Physical. Olivia Newton-John's taken it, and it's a title track in the new album. So I went, okay. And then
Opportunity missed.
We all know what happens. And there's lots of those little opportunities that are missed. There's lots of clusterfucks as well that you wish you didn't do, but there's a lot of opportunity that's missed. So I continued on, and I had about 4 acts that I was looking after, and then one act, they were called The Rocks, who were a cover band, said, we want to go to Queensland.
That's an interesting choice. Was there a reason behind wanting to go to... I mean, obviously, there was a good circuit,
yeah,
and great work opportunities.
You could work 52 weeks a year.
Yeah.
And earn good money.
Yeah.
And everyone thinks they're better than everyone else. You know, we're going to go to Queensland and we'll take over and, you know, blah, blah, blah. I'd spent time in Melbourne. And you see, the timelines are weird because I was lucky in a lot of senses that there was an agent that I used in Adelaide when I started called Rod Gunner. He worked for CBA, Central Booking Agency. They were the biggest agency in Adelaide. And he was one of these agents that, and when I was an agent, I was never like this. I was all about the money. You know, it was always about the money. How much money can we earn? And you get these agents that just love the band, and they're the band's best friend, and, they champion the band so hard. Yeah, and he was like that. And Men at Work came through Adelaide, and they hadn't released Who Can It Be Now. They were just a shitty, horrible sounding Melbourne band, right? I'll tell you a story about the church in a minute as well. And I used to go to gigs with him, and I'm listening to Men at Work, and I'm going, this is a pile of shit, It, like, literally, it was horrible. And so anyway, away they go. They do their 2 or 3 shows, and Rod Gunner loves this band. But it wasn't necessarily the band; it was the people that he really liked.
He made a connection.
Yeah, and so he champions this band, and then they get signed by CBS, and they release Who Can It Be Now. Now this band have gone from working to no one to 1,000 people. And this is literally the trajectory of Men at Work. No one, 1,000 people with a hit single, and then more people working 5 nights a week through all the beer gardens in the country with a hit album. Then they go to America, and they go from 1,000 people to 30,000 people or 50,000 people. I never rated Men at Work as a band. I love Colin Hay. He's a brilliant singer.
An incredibly good songwriter.
Yeah. So I hated...
They managed to churn out hit after hit after hit. They were quirky.
They were quirky. I mean, the Alan Bond thing with the Australia winning the America's Cup and Down Under getting picked up, that all...
And yeah, that would have been a big help.
That was a massive help in America. But going back to Rod Gunner, the band got that big. I think his name was Russell Deppler. He was the manager of the band. I went to one of their parties. They were, like, when this band, they came back to Australia, and I went to one of their parties. There was a punch bowl, like in whatever that drug movie was that Al Pacino was in, it was a punch bowl full of cocaine at this party. Right? It was insane, right? I had a chat to Russell, and we were talking, and I said, how much money have you made? And he said, I could live 4 lifetimes and not spend the money I've made.
Wow.
That's how big the band were. I think their first royalty check was like, back in 1981, was like $6 million.
Wow.
That was the very first one they got. So, Men at Work did extremely well, for the short period of time that they shone. Going back to the church, right? When we were at ATV Northern had signed the church. They were interested in Steve Kilbey, right, as a songwriter. And they said you should go and see them. So Brent and I went to see them on the Thursday night that we were in town. And they were doing some uni bar. They were horrible.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I love their first single.
Yeah. This is before Unguarded Moment, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right, but they've signed them on Unguarded Moment.
Which is a great song.
A fantastic
Great
song. Yeah, but what I heard was nothing like... So anyway, I'll tell you the story. So I'm thinking, what are these guys looking at? I don't get it, But they are looking at the songwriter, right? And of course they signed, I think they were signed to EMI, So they went in, they're signed by the publishing company, going to 301 EMI.
He's got a very unique voice too.
He has,
Very deep.
So Don Bruno said to me, he said, we're sending the album to Bob Clearmountain in America. He's going to mix it down, I got the cassette after Bob Clearmountain in America had done his magic on it, and I just went, holy shit. It was just, this is not the same band. Can't be the same band. Can't be the same song. It was unbelievable. So that's, that's what happens,
I guess it's that thing, somebody saw something that was there and they developed it.
Yeah. So there is something to say about Gatekeepers, that
sometimes they get it right.
Sometimes they get it right. I mean, everyone takes credit, you know, when they get it right. And, you know, everyone runs a mile when they get it wrong.
Tell me, what's in your mind the difference between being an agent and a manager?
Well, there's a lot, you know.
And can the two coexist? Can you be an agent and a manager?
Okay, how do we pull this apart and put it back together? Before social media, an agent did his job and a manager did their job. The manager looked after the act, made sure the act was all right, so the act basically didn't have to think about anything. The agent, if you had a good one, put you in the right venues and did the right deals and made you money. Now, I've always been agent and manager for my acts. Because of my background, I don't really need an agent, you know. So I'm more in developing, you know, if it's an original band, you're trying to develop the band to build a following and become famous, whatever that is. If it's a cover band or a tribute band, you're trying to make it the best version of the original artist and make the most amount of money that can be made so that the owner or the members, depending on who owns it, can make the most amount of money they can. Agents and managers, I believe, were needed back in the day, but I don't believe they're needed now. You know, people are savvy enough now to go to someone that they think has the ability to go, can you represent my act? I mean, I'm not talking about, you know, the $300, you know, soloist or duo or trio. I'm talking about, you know, something that can make serious money, you know. You find someone that can represent the act, has access and can negotiate a deal with an agent if needed, or do it themselves. Australian Eagles use an agent, and it's easier that way with theatres because theatres are booked out so far in advance. You need someone that's concentrating on that all the time to see where the opportunities are. I don't have the time to do that. But you negotiate.
Yeah, so how far in advance, like in my limited experience of dealing with theatres, they're generally 6 to 12, you know, well, usually 12 months.
12 to 18 months out.
12 to 18 months.
To get the right venues. Mm-hmm. There are opportunities that come up where a band isn't selling or someone's had a hold on a venue and something's happening and, you know, an opportunity comes up. You've also got some of the bigger promoters that have a relationship with theatres, dummy booking a whole lot of dates.
Just holding them,
and
so
just holding
blocking them out from anyone else taking them.
Yeah, and that makes it hard. But getting back to agents and managers, you don't need, I believe, these days, you don't need both. You just need someone that can represent your act, that can... Because what people don't realise now, every single thing in music from the organisational side is now negotiated. You've got James Raine earning $60,000 a show at the moment doing pubs, right? I'd be very surprised if he was paying his agent 10%, because the agent, a 10-year-old could book James Raine into a pub. James Raine will do 1,000 people on a $65 ticket, no matter who sells it. So he's not sitting there going, I'm going to give this guy $6,500. You know, I've done work with Con from Holly Street Country Club. You know, Con gave me Holly Street Country Club to break in Queensland. You know, first shows we did in Queensland, we were doing 300 people a show. People just didn't get the concept. But once they saw what it did, they got it.
It
right?
grew very, very quick.
Usually takes 3-4 times. Took them 2. They went from 300 people to 1,000 people, basically.
Well, I saw them just recently. They sold out 2 nights in a row at Twin Towns, in the showroom.
Yeah.
Sold out.
First-
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Well, the first time we did Twin Towns, we did 360. But that's, that's what you've got to, Con had faith in his product, so that's what you've got to do to break territory. And with the way Con has put that whole thing together, he knew, just expose the act, show them what we can do, and the next time we come through, we'll fill it. That's the faith that he has, but he also has the product to back it up.
Yeah, and he's fairly savvy when it comes to marketing and stuff.
Oh.
Like they were pre-selling, pardon me, pre-selling tickets to the next time they're back a year in advance at the show.
Yeah.
Well, we've got this date already locked in. And they had a flyer in the seat, every seat in the theatre. It's
Book your ticket for next year.
Book your ticket for next year.
Yep. And
That's pretty savvy. Not a lot of people do that.
No. And Highley Street, when you look at the trajectory of that, that was, that was all through COVID, and a whole lot of people all over the world sitting at home watching what Con's putting out every Friday afternoon and building a following, and doing the covers really, really well, So there are things like, but getting back to everything, like when I introduced Highley Street into Queensland, Con wasn't paying 10%. That deal is negotiated. So every single thing in music now is negotiated. And it's just the way it is, because there's a lot...
So in that relationship, you would say he was the manager, you were the agent?
Yeah, that's correct. He manages his own act. He's over all of it. It's a lot of stress. But and then you have different situations. Like I've got relationships with people where some people just aren't built to promote. They're just not built.
It's a risk.
It's a risk.
If people are risk. Sometimes people are risk averse.
I risk $40,000 every weekend. The Australian Eagles go out on the road. So you're risking 40 grand over 48 hours. People that come into it and start doing theatres, they come into it from the wrong angle. They look at it and go, oh, we're going to charge $69,000. The theatre holds 1,000 people. We're going to earn 69 grand. That's wrong. You've got to look at it and go, okay, what are my costs? What are my real costs? All of my costs, right down to
flights, accom,
the petrol,
hiring a car,
all of that shit. And then you divide that by the ticket price and the theatre cost, and go, I need to do 250, 270 people
to break even.
And if you do it that way, then you know what your risk is. You're not counting the chickens before they hatch, and you're not having to go to the wife, we've got to sell the house. And I've seen it happen.
Yeah.
I've done shows. I've saw a guy sell his house in Townsville, on an outdoor show for Daryl Braithwaite in like 1988. Just 160 people turned up.
Wow.
Absolutely did his ass. And there's nothing worse than picking money up off people when they've lost money. I've lost money. I did a baby animals tour. She got nodules.
Oh.
Didn't happen. I'd spent all the money on marketing, all that sort of stuff. I had two sold out shows on Midnight Oil. He got food poisoning. So shit happens. Australian Eagles go to Melbourne. Michael gets vertigo, ends up in hospital. 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and you can't do a show. So shit happens, but good things happen, as well. Like I think the first time I bought Screaming Jets, they'd never ever done North Queensland before. They'd released their first single. The album was doing well. I bought the whole week for 45 grand and grossed 100. You know, so
you've got to take the wins and the losses.
You've got to. It's where you finish at the end of it. I mean, we've got something like, I think we've got 23 shows with Australian Eagles this year. It's not a matter of winning and losing and counting it up at each individual show. The investor, because they have an investor, you know, he looks at it, where does he end up in November? Am I in front? Am I behind?
Investor, promoter?
Investor and promoters are different.
So investor, but you need that sort of to have capital, because a theatre, they're booking a theatre is what, $5,000 more?
Yeah.
How much is it? How much is a theatre?
A theatre is anywhere between a decent theatre.
Yeah.
Not Coffs Harbour that holds 250. A theatre is between $7,000 and $15,000.
All right. So that's one cost.
Yeah.
Then you have marketing.
Yeah. All right. Let's go through it. Let's do the math.
Yeah.
Let's say the theatre's $8,000.
Yep.
All right. We'll do it on one show in Sydney.
Okay.
Okay. So you're going down to do one show in Sydney. Theatre's $8,000. Airfares and accommodation and hire cars are $3,500. All right. So you're up to 11,500. Your marketing for that show is $3,500. You're up to 15 grand.
That's pretty cheap.
Yeah.
3.5.
Yeah. Well, that's.
I guess that's a fine line, calculating how much marketing you need to do to make sure the show
Exactly.
happens.
Yeah.
Versus not overspending. So you.
That's it. And when you're looking at it, I mean, if you've got to spend more, then you spend more. I mean, you can't do anything if you're in a dog gig. There are dog gigs.
Yeah,
They're
okay.
just shit. They just don't work. And you try and avoid them. You get caught once and you go, I'm not doing that again.
Yeah.
There's a whole conversation that you can have on that.
Yeah.
But, you
so
know,
with marketing, we're up to what, 15?
we're up to 15 grand. Then you've got to pay the band.
Yep.
You know, so let's say, for example, everyone's on $600 a show, right? You got 5 band members. So
There's $3,000.
there's 3 grand. And then you've got the guy that owns the show. And you got to pay him, as an investor or promoter, you got to pay him for using the name,
Yeah.
you know? So that's a negotiated
So
fee.
you're up to $20,000.
Yeah, you're up to $20,000. Okay, so Australian Eagles are an expensive act to go and see. I mean, we're $90, you know. But if you're just average, you know, band that's doing theatres, you're $69, $70.
Yeah.
Right? So you divide 70 by 20. It's around about 270, 250, 60, 70 people.
Yeah.
That's what you've got to do to cover
break
everything.
even.
Now, that's what the band's getting their money anyway. They don't give a rat's ass. You know, they're going, okay, where's my airfare? Where's my comm? Where's my hire car? Where's my money? That's it.
Yeah.
You know, the theatre can't lose because the theatre take their money out first.
Yeah.
Right now,
Well, they get everything up front. I guess that's the biggest issue is you're talking 12 to 18 months out in advance.
Yep. So
all of that money's way out.
Yeah. Well, the theatre money isn't. You're paying a deposit on the theatre, right? You pay a deposit on the theatre, but that's dead money. You know, that could be anywhere from $800 to $2,000. Book 20 gigs. There's 40 grand.
Yeah.
Right? And all of that money is sitting in someone's trust account for the next 18 months. Right? You're paying for your airfares 4 months out, 3 months out, trying to get cheap airfares. So that money's out there. So you've got all of this money that's out in the ether. Australian Eagles investor at the moment has spent roughly, we've only done 4 shows, haven't been paid for any yet, right?
Yeah.
But he's probably got about $80,000-$90,000 out at the moment that he's got to wait to get back and then hopefully make a profit. So that's how theatres work.
Yeah.
Now, when you look at theatres, Redland Bay Performing Arts Centre do it really well. Carolika in Melbourne do it really well. I mean, they are very good at what they do, and they help the act. You're not on your own as a promoter. And then you get into the new era of theatre owners or theatre managers where you've got Live Nation, right? Now,
They don't have a very good reputation. Well, they get quite a beat up on them in the media.
they do. I'm not a fan, but I'm not a fan. I'm a fan, but I'm not a fan. You know, like I've got a foot in both camps. I understand the business model. A lot of people don't understand what the business model is. But I'll give you an example. Just moving out of that for a second, there are two things now in the world that we live in today. Talent is now third.
Okay.
You know, it's money, database, talent. I can make anyone famous with money,
And
a database. You know, the talent, Korea is showing us that you train 10, 15-year-olds, 11 basic dance moves, put a headset on them, put them in a studio, make them sound better than what they are, and they just bob around the stage and a whole bunch of kids go nuts. It's not about the live performance. It's about
Image marketing.
it's image, marketing, brand ambassadors, you know, all that sort of stuff, which makes money. Now, talking about managers, right? Managers in South Korea and China, you know, and they're massive markets, they take 50%.
Wow.
But they fund everything. That artist doesn't have to need, they get their own road manager supplied. You know, it takes them around in their van and drops them off for whatever performance they're doing, but they all make money. The girls in Blackpink are all multi-millionaires.
Oh yeah, and
You know,
that's an interesting act, which is highly driven by social media.
I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan. You know.
Yeah.
I mean,
Is one of the girls that are in that? Is she an Australian girl?
yeah, she's Korean, brought up in New Zealand,
Oh, okay.
spent some time in Sydney.
Incredibly popular.
Yeah, but then you get stray kids. I know we're going all over the place here, but you get stray kids. You've got Felix. They discovered him on a street in Sydney, you know, and he's in Stray Kids. Now, a lot of people don't know about Stray Kids. It's like Blackpink, but there's about 10 of them. They're all boys, you know, and Billboard released the most popular act in the world yesterday or the day before. It's Taylor Swift.
Yep.
Second, Stray Kids.
Oh wow.
You know, and it's when they come to Australia, they'll be bigger than Blackpink.
Wow.
You know, we've got 30, 40 acts coming out of Korea this year doing Rod Laver Arena and Kudos in Sydney.
Yeah, the K-pop thing's just
And they're just sold
gone
out.
through the roof, hasn't it?
They're just sold out. You know, every single one of them. You know, and that's another story because we've got so many subcultures in Australia now. We've got young Vietnamese promoters. We've got young African promoters. We've got Nigerian promoters that we don't even hear of, right? But they're all doing stuff, bringing stuff over from Vietnam, and they all have a captive market, you know, and they bring them out, and they're sort of a bit like from our generation, Kiwi promoters bringing Kiwi acts over to Australia and going, who the hell's that? And 1,000 people turn up. We don't know who they are.
It's one of the amazing things that I've always, noticed over time is Kiwis are very good at supporting live music.
Yeah.
They are they love it.
Yep.
More than Australians are.
Yeah. Yeah, they're... I think it's in the culture, though, because
Yeah.
I've never, you know, they can all sing.
They're
I know that stereotype.
They're musically literate.
Yeah. Might be a bit of a stereotype. It's like saying all Chinese are smart.
No, they can't
you know.
all sing. But more often than not, they can.
Yeah,
but they've been brought up around it.
Yeah. I mean, it's the culture. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
you know, it's everything from, I mean, you know, I do a lot of stuff with Sex and Chocolate. All those boys were brought up through the church.
Yep.
You know, and they were all singing in church and stuff like that. And that's all of their first memories. Go back to going to church, singing in the choir, doing whatever. And then they've discovered music, and, they discover soul, Motown, all that sort of stuff, and that just makes them follow their path. But, I mean, Stan Walker was on that talent show. That guy is world class.
He's an amazing singer.
You know.
And his brother, just as good.
Yeah. But you've got all of these acts that, and you see it all now because of social media. They've all got their little reels up and stuff like that. So let's go back to Live Nation.
Yeah, okay, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
let's go back. Yeah. So we go back to Live Nation. Live Nation have got Anita's theatre at Thirroul.
Okay.
Right? We're doing that in November.
Yep.
This shows you the power of Live Nation and their database, right? So I don't know whether they own it, manage it, or whatever, right? But they run it. We put tickets on sale. We did an EDM, electronic mail out. Sold 185 tickets. That's the power of a good representative of a theatre, because they have this massive database and they want to fill their theatre and they want to help you fill that theatre, and you go within, just on one EDM, you sell nearly 200 tickets.
Which nearly covers your costs.
You're 50 short.
Yeah.
You go, happy days, the show's not until November. That's what you need, so Live Nation are very good. Now, it screwed up the frontier model and, so the tier of Australian music was Mushroom, and they're all involved. There's all different partners, but you've got Mushroom Records, Frontier Touring, Harbour Agency, Premier Artists, and all of them have got people that are involved in different ways. So that was sort of a cabal of Australian music. You had the two biggest agencies, you had Frontier as the international promoter, and you had Mushroom as the record company. Great setup, right? Live Nation come in as a disruptor, and they start putting acts in. So Frontier are going to an act overseas going, we'll give you X amount of dollars and we'll do this and we'll do that. And then Live Nation come in and they go, we'll buy a whole world tour.
Wow.
All right? Taylor Swift, they bought the whole thing. They guarantee her X amount of dollars. Now, the thing, when you go into different countries, like in America, you need 52 lawyers and 52 accountants because they all have different
States, different laws.
Different tax laws and shit like that. So with Live Nation doing it, you don't have to worry about it. And they go, merchandising, we'll do all the merchandising and we'll give you a percentage of all sales. So you are on the road for 18 months and you do not have to worry about a thing except getting on stage and performing. They supply everything. It's a no-brainer. It really is a no-brainer. I mean, U2 were releasing an album every 2 years. And everyone's going, U2, like U2 had their day.
Yeah.
But they had to deal with Live Nation to release an album every 2 years and go out and do a world tour on that album. I think they had a 5-album deal over 10 years. And Live Nation just send them out on tour again, touring on the strength of that album, and paid them a lot of money to do it. A Live Nation share's about $156.
It's a publicly listed company.
Yeah. And they've got the O2 Arena, Wembley. They've got all of the stadiums locked up. So when they do bring their acts out through Europe and Britain and all the rest of it, they manage all of those outdoor venues.
So to get into those venues, you have to deal with...
Basically.
You've got no choice.
And that's a problem. And they're also partners in Ticketmaster or whatever it is. So
the fingers in all the pies.
It's integration of all aspects of music, and it's, for big artists, it's great.
I guess that's where a lot of the negative publicity comes from, is from the smaller venues, smaller artists.
Yeah.
It,
I think the world now needs people like Live Nation, because everything is so instant. Your fame is limited. I mean, you cannot stay out of the public eye for 2 years like you used to.
yeah.
You have to be doing it all the time. You've got to be touring your album, and then in between that, become a circus performer on social media to keep you relevant, so people don't forget you, because there's so much stuff coming at you, you know.
You're fighting for people's attention.
Yeah, and you know, everyone's got a 10-second, you know, attention span now. You know,
Goldfish thing.
yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So,
man.
getting back to, you know, where the normal people earn their crust, you know, theatres and clubs and pubs and stuff like that. It's not hard out there, but it is tough to find your slice of the pie in the market. You know, there are people that are very, very good at the whole social media thing, finding the market for the band. I struggle. I really struggle. I can't get my head around it. I just give people bundles of money, hoping they get it right, you know. So, and if they don't, we change. I mean, like, we've changed agents. We've tweaked the social marketing side of things, and, you know, hopefully we get it right. you know.
Yeah, I guess it's that you have to try and work out what your market is too. Have you noticed a big difference in young people going out to see live music in venues? It happens differently now.
I've got a 22-year-old daughter. She went to Laneway. You know, there's 50,000 people there,
Wow.
you know.
So people are going out and supporting live music, but they're just not doing it in pubs and clubs.
Yeah, and it's different.
Yeah, it's different.
Entertainment is different. You know, I mean, have a look at DJs. I mean, you used to see, you know, people bopping up and down and fucking doing this and that, and they're doing nothing really, because all they've done is plug a USB stick in there and, you know, they've got their set. But if you look at, like, the big festivals now in Europe, it's a USB stick that someone has put together a 40-minute set. You can't even see them. It's all about the atmosphere and the light show. And it's like being in a spaceship. I mean, I wish there was 20. I'd be out there popping pills and and, and going hard, you know. But music's changing, you know.
It is. Of all the things that you've done, and over quite a long career now, if you had to pick one highlight of all of the things that you've done, what would that highlight be?
There's lots. I sort of look at a highlight being adversity to success, you know, because you've got to stay at it, you know. You have to stay at it. I used to have a lot to do with a loan shark, right? And he was a big gambler. And he said, most people have $100, lose 50 and go, I'm going to keep 50, you know. He said, you've got to stay in the game. He said, you've got to use that 50. But what I'm trying to say is that as a promoter, investor, agent, manager, someone that's just involved in the entertainment industry, you have to stay at it. A highlight would be, I was involved in the first 3 big day outs in Queensland. And the very first one, it rained all week. It rained all week. And on the Thursday, I was with the Queensland representative for Leeson West looking for another venue.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. We ended up doing Parklands, and 12,000 people turned up. The second year, 30,000 people turned up. By the third year, 50,000 people turned up. The Gold Coast show became the profit for Lees and West. So they could do all their other shows around Australia, and the Gold Coast one was basically the one that made money. I'm happy about that because it was one of the, they had a lot going against them. You know, Gold Coast City Council, again, everyone, you know, wants to put their hand up and say they were part of it when it's successful, but they didn't want to know about it. They did not want it on the Gold Coast.
Oh, wow.
You know, so helping to get that up and running and make it successful. And I had a lot to do with that because by then I'd moved into music sponsorship. I was working for Philip Morris. Well, I wasn't working for them, I was consulting for them. Music and tobacco, brilliant. Should never, you know, government get into shit that they shouldn't, you know, because it keeps, you know, you know, people get lung cancer and have a health problem, but it keeps people working as well, you know. And then I was involved with Lion Nathan Forex in Queensland, and I did all of their music sponsorship. So with the big day out, I tied up, it was sponsored by Triple J, but I managed to get exclusive beer rights, give them a pile of money, get exclusive. So the only product that you could drink was a Forex product.
Wow.
You know, whether it be Han Ice or Forex or whatever. 50,000 people drinking, you know, for a sponsorship investment, that is a good return for the brewery. And then what we did is we bought the 90 Days of Summer on CFM. So anything to do with music, it was all Forex branded.
Yeah.
So they're all highlights of taking something that didn't exist and making it, you know, from the sponsorship to the event to making it happen.
Yeah.
Does the punter know? Not really, but it's, you know, and that's all that counts. You know, so.
And very rewarding and like, I guess, fulfilling from an emotional and career.
Well,
pathing.
from a career point of view, it was good because is that it didn't exist anywhere in the country. So after I'd put together the whole Forex thing and, you know, the whole radio station thing, keeping it separate and not losing their alternative clout, you know, with Triple J, I had to be careful how I put all that together. But that started a whole thing. Promoters went, oh shit, people will actually pay for this. So when they did it in South Australia, they did a deal with Coopers. When they did it in Sydney, they did a deal with Tui's. When they did it in Perth, they did a deal with Swan. So I'm an idiot because I didn't tie it all up. You know, I was only doing it in Queensland. But you know, I don't go into territories that I don't know anything about. You know, I've done that and got my ass kicked.
So that's where you've got to be careful what risks you take.
People are protective of, you know, it's just like we are. You know, we're protective of what we do in Queensland. I mean, there are so many people moving up from Sydney and Melbourne thinking they're promoters and agents, and they find it very hard to get into the Queensland market because we're very protective, even though, you know, a lot of people are in competition with each other, they tend to come together. And, you know, when an outsider comes in and it's like, you're not smarter than us, you don't know better, and Queensland's different.
We've talked about highlights, and along the way things do go wrong.
Yeah, shit.
What's something that stands out to you that went wrong? What did you learn from it?
We can go two ways with this. I mean, when I mentioned like oils, baby animals, and, you know, that hurt financially, but it didn't kill me.
Can you insure against that sort of thing?
You used to be able to. You used to, but it's too expensive now. You know, you just don't bother. I'd say probably the worst thing, I'll probably put myself out on a limb a little bit here, but probably putting all my eggs in one basket with Lion Nathan. I was doing so many things, and Lion Nathan Forex became everything, and I dropped everything, dropped everything else, and
So you're very reliant on them, on the deal.
I ended up. I was an idiot. I was living in the fast lane, and I really wasn't thinking about, the future. And everything's fine when you're getting a bundle of money and you just
living the dream.
living a dream. I was getting paid to advise. That's, I wasn't doing anything. They go, I'd go into marketing meetings, and these people would be spending, $250,000 or $300,000. And we would sit in the marketing meeting, and there'd be all these marketing heads all around. And I'd get out of there an hour and a half later, and I couldn't pick the one person that had made the decision to spend the money, but we were spending the money. These people are brilliant at not taking responsibility. But everyone's going, oh that sounds good, that sounds good. And at the end of it, they were spending the money. And I used to scratch my head and going, who made that decision? But they were clever, because they don't want to if it didn't work and it was a dog, they didn't want to be the one responsible for spending the $300,000.
Man.
And that's what it's like.
So it's like management by committee.
Philip Morris was exactly the same, I've got Ray Maguire to thank for Philip Morris. He gave it to me. Ray Maguire was doing golf tournaments and went, I've got this mate, he wants to do this, I don't really know a lot about it, don't fuck it up. That was it.
Ray is such a icon.
Yeah.
All the things that he's done,
Yeah. I mean, he'd just finished doing the Works tour with Queen, and then he was up here doing Greg Norman, Sanctuary Cove golf tournament and doing all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And that the Philip Morris thing kept me going for like 4 years until the government changed the legislation.
I remember that time when you had a band going out and playing in all the pubs and giving away free cigarettes. Like, it was just a marketing
it was
marketing
just
cigarettes.
Had all these cigarette girls there, they're like all these models and shit. And they'd just be giving out free cigarettes. And, we had Best of the USA, which was Marlboro.
Yep.
We had 30 Years of Oz Rock, was with Peter Jackson. We had, I can't remember the other one, but that was Long Beach. So they were the three big brands, that, and then, Forex, with that whole thing, they had the Forex Sound Express. They had this giant semi-trailer with a mobile stage on it. And it just run through Queensland performing, for councils on beaches and parks and all sorts of stuff. On top of, what you were doing with the Big Day Out, and then all the touring bands at the time, we were tying up all the hotels with exclusivity and stuff like that. But probably the worst thing that's ever happened to me was with Forex. I'd put all my eggs in one basket, and the brand directors had changed. And when the brand director was leaving, because I was responsible for him doing, he got the credit for the Big Day Out and, all that everything that they'd done. He said to me, do you want more money? I went, no, I'm right. I'm happy with what I get. He said, do you want me to extend your contract? I went, it was running out. I still had 12 months to go. And I said, oh, no, it'll be okay. No, it'll be fine. I should have taken it, right? I should have gone, give me another 3 years and give me another $3,000 a month or whatever. But I didn't. I was stupid. And
You didn't want to be greedy.
I didn't want to be greedy, and I was quite happy. And this was a lesson. When someone new comes in, they don't want to do it the way it was being done. They want to do it their way. So a few things changed, and I immediately went, fuck, I should have signed that contract and I should have taken more money. But anyway, the new brand director, we built a rapport and things were going okay. But then 12 months down the track, when my contract was up for renewal, Lion Nathan, the parent company, decided that they didn't want marketing teams in every state. They were going to do everything out of Sydney, right? Because they had Forex, Swan, West End, and they bought all that shit off of Alan Bond when he went broke. That's who bought all the breweries.
They consolidated and moved
They
it all
consolidated and they didn't renew my contract. Mm-hmm. And I bought a house on Hedges. Cost me $360,000. Yeah, in 1999. And yeah, I lost it.
Oh, wow.
Through all of that, because when I lost the Forex contract, I didn't have anything else to fall back on. And I could not replace doing 10 million things what they were paying me.
Yeah.
And I ended up, so something that cost me $360,000 is, it wasn't on the beach, it was on the opposite side of the road, but it was on a corner. And, that's worth 10 million now.
Yeah.
That hurts, but the lesson in that is that you do not put all your eggs in one basket. You do not rely on
giving your power away.
Yeah, you don't rely on one source of income. You have to spread it.
Having gone through all of that and lots of highlights, would you recommend, like with your kids, with your daughter, is it something that you would encourage them to, an industry that you would encourage them to get involved in?
Yeah. It's done differently now. Like kids are doing it differently now. But I don't think there's anything wrong with the entertainment industry. I think it's a great industry.
And you don't think it's gotten, like I guess it's a different perspective because you say things are done differently, and people aren't necessarily, well, some people, a lot of people aren't very good at change.
No.
And the things have changed a lot.
The biggest thing that I see is that I see people between the ages of 50 and 65. That's really the market that I work in, right? And I see them bag shit, and I never comment on Facebook. I see it on Facebook and they bag this and bag that, and it's like, DJs and whatever. And I feel like going, this is not meant for you. It's like, I don't even know why you're commenting because it doesn't affect you and it's not made for you. You've had your day. You're lucky you're working. I mean, we are all lucky we're working. The previous generation at the age between 50, I'm 67, right? Between 50 and 70, weren't in the music industry.
No.
The whole boomer thing.
I can remember turning 30 and thinking, oh, my time's up.
Yeah. Well, that whole boomer thing has extended everyone's careers. It's not going to happen for the next generation.
Yeah.
There's not enough of them. I mean, we've got cashed up retirees that are accidental millionaires.
They're willing to come out and pay for entertainment.
And they can afford it. And that's what they're doing. And when you look at markets, I mean, if you look at markets and break down data, right, you get a Fleetwood Mac tribute, they're pulling from 50 to 70 years of age.
Yep.
Right? An Eagles tribute is pulling from 60 to 70 years of age. Fleetwood Mac, 60% women, as high as 70, 30% male. Eagles are 50-50. And it's the woman that is buying the ticket for the lazy ass husband because he won't get up off his ass and buy a ticket.
Yeah.
So she's buying the ticket for them because all our tickets sell in twos.
Yeah.
So there's all of that sort of stuff, that, I mean, we haven't even got into AI and how that's going to change shit. I mean, and I'm really excited about that.
Yeah.
You know?
I think that's a discussion for another time.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, that's...
But that's happening very quickly too. I think that's the thing that's the hardest thing to come to terms with in this day and age is it's not the fact that things are changing, it's the pace that they're changing at. Things are changing so quickly.
This is the problem with all industries, but even, like, there was an ad in New York, and it was a big billboard, and it was basically an AI person going, we can replace all your employees. That's a scary part, right? I think with entertainment in general, and even with young people that are savvy, is that everyone is struggling with the pace of change. They're not necessarily struggling with the technology. They can get their head around it, given a little bit of time. But the pace that it's changing, and anyone that says they're not struggling with it is lying. Because, and it's going to be, Elon Musk predicts his robots will be performing operations worldwide within the next 5 years and will be better than the best surgeons in the world.
More precise, more attentive, more not tired.
They said within 10 years you'll have forgotten that Tesla made cars. They'll be known for in-home robotics. You know, like, would I advise my kids to get into entertainment? Yes. Yeah. I wish I could reinvent myself and be 20. Yeah. Because I'd be all over it. Yeah. And I would be everywhere. Yeah. You know, not just Australia. I'd be all over the world because everything is instant now. Yeah. You can go anywhere. Yeah. Kids don't think twice about going to Vietnam for a holiday or China.
Thank you very much for spending some time with me this afternoon.
That's all right.
Thank you very much for sticking around and watching the content. Please make a comment if you've got anything that you'd like to comment about anything that Andrew had to say. And I'll see you on the next podcast. Thank you.
Take care.